Hey guys, it's Kim here, and joining me once again is Becky. That side every week, I can't get it right. Hi Becky, how you doing? How you doing?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm fine. We are here with part 2 of our Majora's Mask Warbler tutorial. So if you missed it, links to part 1 is in the description below. And we have a materials list. Oh my god, we have a materials list. So, yeah. Becky, do you want to do a really quick recap as to how to get to this point, like literally 2 sentences or less, and then what we're going to do today? No pressure.
In 2 sentences less, we built a mould out of clay using air dry clay. We used a kind of bowl for a base underneath, so we didn't use loads of clay, and we let it dry solid, and I did a bit of sanding just to help smooth it out. Still not as smooth as I would like, but this one is.
Oh, it's nice. I like that one. It's creepy. So, I hate it.
Running your hands across it is so satisfying. It's like ha 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 ha.
Oh my god, that's weird.
Yeah. So yeah, and today we're going to turn it into a mask using Worbla, and we're going to do this one. We've also got some cones ready for our
spikes.
Spikes, whatever you want to call them. So yeah, we're going to turn this into a mask using Worbla, and we're going to look at some Worbla techniques, and then next week we will paint them all and finish them off.
Cool. So what is the materials list? Tell me about that.
So what have I put on the materials list? Finished clay mold, check. Worbla, check. What else have I said?
Heat gun.
Heat gun.
A teaspoon and a pot of water.
Teaspoon, pot of water, Vaseline, and scissors. Haha.
And Dishy, very pertinent question in chat. Where did you buy your Warbler?
I bought my Warbler online at coscraft.co.uk, which I believe is the cheapest or the best value in the UK, and they're really good and really helpful, and yeah.
And is there anything you should consider when buying Worbla?
This is Warbla's Finest Art is actually the full name. This is the standard one. They do a really a shiny one. Shiny's not quite the right word. They do a black one. My goodness, it's going to be one of those days. They do a black coloured one that is sort of meant to have a slightly nicer finish. It's a bit less granular on the surface, and it doesn't warp so much when overheating. So black one is kind of great for if you want a really smooth finish, or if you want to use it, if you want to use and have a black base, you can kind of use that as a you know, use that without priming, painting, and messing it up. Worbla is great because you don't need to throw any of it away. Here is my Worbla offcuts jar, which I'm going to need a bigger jar soon. Yeah. Or I'm going to need to make some more stuff. Maybe I'll make loads of tiny dragons and put them all on Etsy. But yes, do not throw any scraps away, even the tiniest little ones. They can all be useful. Keep them all. So the great thing about Worbla is you will not waste a single bit of your material, which is really exciting and really fun.
Hey, Becky.
Yeah?
What is Worbla?
Worbla is a thermoplastic, which means it's plastic that can be affected, its state can be affected by heat. So Worbla, it's plasticky it's plasticky around, but its one side is shiny, which is a kind of has a stickiness to it. But Worbla can connect to other pieces of Worbla, but that side will stick really well. It sticks really well to wood and things. So if you're, doing stuff with that. So Worbla is a thermoplastic, meaning thermoheat, plastic.
On that note, where can I buy a heat gun, and why can't I use a hairdryer?
You can use a hairdryer, don't. I used a hairdryer. So it is possible to use a hairdryer. The problems with using a hairdryer is it will not get hot enough to heat the Worbla up to its full malleability. So you'll always, if you're using a hairdryer, you'll never understand how great Worbla is. You'll always think Worbla's a bit rubbish. So also, it will heat the material up so much because it takes so much longer to get to that level where it's hot enough to use. It will actually be too hot then to put your fingers on and mold with. So it sort of doesn't work. A heat gun, this was 12 quid. Like, they're not expensive. This is like screw fixes, basic heat gun. So yeah, this model, thank you. This is their basic model. It costs 12 quid. It came from Screwfix, but like any hardware store will do a heat gun. They're used for a lot of things in DIY, and builders use them a lot. This one has 2 settings. I use the lower one. I know a lot of people use a higher one because it's quicker. I use the lower one because the higher one sets off my fire alarm. It just, there are components inside. They will heat up. Like the smell of that heating up, apparently my fire alarm just hates it. So
was that expensive? Like, if we were going to get into WORBLA, is that expensive?
So the whole roll of WORBLA that I've got, it was 1 meter by 75 centimeters, and that was like 25 quid. Mm-hmm. But that will do me for, like, if I wanted to make Majora's Mask, I could probably make 10 of them out of that WORBLA and have scraps to go and make a bunch of mini dragon statues as well, or do details or stuff. So it's that kind of, initially you might buy it and be like, this is a lot of money, but it's worth it. And I bought, like, to start with, I bought black WORBLA to start, and I bought just like an A3 sheet that I think was a tenner, just so I could like try it and see if it worked for me. Like, WORBLA, it's phenomenal. It's magic. It really is.
It's magic. Your new thing. You love it. You love it, Species. You won't shut up about it. Jesus Christ. Seriously, all of the last month is just like, Becky, WORBLA, 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 WORBLA. I can make stuff out of WORBLA now. I'm a WORBLA sculptor. I just did a thing about WORBLA. I just did another workshop about WORBLA. Let's do a tutorial about... Hi.
But look at the little thing I made out of WORBLA scraps.
It's a dragon. So Dishy says, OG WORBLA, brackets, brown, surface is rough, good for strength but needs a lot of time to finish. Priming with wood glue, flex bond, GESSO, spray primer. WORBLA black art has a smoother surface, sticky side is less sticky than brown or white WORBLA, needs less time to finish but is less stretchy. WORBLA pearly art, even smoother, also strong and sticky, needs even less time to finish, also still stretchy. Pearly art was made after black art was improved where black art lacked. WORBLA flame red. Oh my god. Wow. Extra strong. Used for bits when you need extra strength. WORBLA cobra cast. Mesh-like texture. Great for strength, but usually used as a lower layer, so you need to make to cover it with foam or other types of WORBLA. WORBLA transparent art. Transparent WORBLA used to make flames or ice, for example. Doesn't need finishing. Can be dyed with polyester dyes. WORBLA.
I have some WORBLA transparent to do the glass bits in my Antique Dimes helmet, which I'm excited.
I like this. Bernard Takedown says, I'm pretty sure Pearly Art and Flame Red are Pokemon games.
I mean, someone's already said that, like, WORBLA is a bird, like a
yeah,
warbler.
It sounds like it. WORBLA. A warbler.
So I did just want to talk about making a paper mold, because I talked about that last week and didn't show it off. And I didn't actually do one for Majora's Mask, because there's too many bubbles in it. It just got too complicated. But I have done one for this smooth mask. It just involved putting a piece of paper over and kind of pushing it round and working out where the excess was and cutting that out and then cutting around it.
Okay.
So, you know, you can just put a whole piece of WORBLA over it, and that's what I'm going to do with Majora's. But with this, you know, if you've got excess and you can cut it out, why not cut it out? Because then you won't have to smooth down the WORBLA to make it not look bobbly in the places where you've got an overlap. So that's my template for that one. I haven't cut the eye holes because if you're eagle-eyed, you'll notice that the eye holes are slightly asymmetric on this. So I'll push them through and sculpt them as I'm going.
So, did you make that using your half mask with the bowl idea?
There's the bowl. There's the mask.
Nice.
So yes, I absolutely did, and I'm so pleased with how it worked out. And it's pretty much a perfect fit.
It's creepy as hell. Cool.
creepy as hell. So yeah, that's where we're going. Right, first things first. If you want your warbler to come off your clay mold, you need to cover it in Vaseline.
Is that where the again, Brooklyn Nine-Nine with Boyle and the criminology expert, where they caked up his face and didn't lube him up first, and he just ran around.
Yeah, like, you know, anyone who's worked with like paper mache, if you don't put Vaseline on, it will stick. This is particular with Warbler because Warbler has a glue-based backing, so it really is designed to stick.
Okay.
So yeah.
How much lube do you need to apply? Do you
You want a thick layer.
A thick layer, okay. Could other things work, like oil or
What's
lube?
good with Vaseline is because, I mean, I don't know about lube. Lube's more...
It's water-based, isn't it?
It's water-based, yeah. You really want that petroleum jelly base because then it won't sink into the clay.
Okay.
It will sit on top of the clay. Like if you've got a water base, it's going to, or something too liquid, going to sink into the clay, and it's going to affect the integrity of your mold.
What about Talkmatic says, can I butter it? Well, as Dishy has pointed out, you need something that can stand the heat from the heat gun. So imagine if you butter it, like that's just going to cook the butter.
You'll just have a pool of butter running out.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah,
God.
It's like the petroleum jelly, it is going to melt. Like you are going to end up with almost liquid petroleum jelly under here, which is also why you need a thick layer, because you need enough that when it turns liquid, it sort of holds in place. But yeah, I would say Vaseline is your best bet. Vaseline's a crafter's friend. Like I have a tub of this that is like for my face and a tub that is for crafting.
I don't need to know about your personal life, but sure. I'm sorry, Vaseline's my trigger word.
It's okay.
What do you have underneath it? Is that like baking paper?
This is baking paper. So actually, if you're going to get really into Warbler, the best thing for this is like a silicone mat, because a silicone mat, you know, like the ones you use for cooking. A silicone mat, like you can peel the Warbler off, it won't stick to it, it's heat resistant. Like you need something that has those properties.
Or a baking tray, like a cupcake tray, not a cupcake tray, like a baking sheet.
Yeah, I mean, I will be using my silicone cupcake tray later because this is the only silicone thing I own. And I know it looks filthy. It's not. It just got dyed by black bruise one time and it never came out. Yeah, so a silicone mat, I will invest in one at some point. But like your standard craft rubber mat will stick and has the potential to melt. Like the heat guns are hot. So just, don't do it on a nice table. I can do baking paper on top of this table because this is a scrappy table.
Is that my old table? It is, isn't it?
It is your old table.
Oh, yeah. My old
that is a scrap table. It's so falling apart. It's so ready to die. Like, as soon as I move, it's not coming back. Warbler can just be cut with scissors. It's great. So we'll just width. Probably about that. I'm leaving a bit of excess on this because the mask it has a bit of overhanging bits, and I kind of wanted to curve the edges of the mask off a bit more than the mould implied. So I'm leaving a bit of excess, and I'm going to leave a lot of excess just to kind of show you how, if you're not making if you haven't made a template, how you can just kind of cut a square and go for it.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, how forgiving is this if you have loads of excess, so you put the Warbler over the mould and then you have loads hanging off the edges, is it forgiving in kind of being able to trim that up and sort that out?
Yeah, you can cut that off, you can save all those offcuts. Like Warbler can be reheated pretty much indefinitely. It will start to lose its texture. Like I'll show you, you'll see in a minute, because one of the downsides of having to have my heat gun on low is I actually do overheat a lot, because I'm having to heat things for longer. But it means my fire alarm doesn't go off, so swings and roundabouts. So an important thing when heating Warbler is the best way to heat is from the textured side, not the shiny side, because the shiny side is glue. You can heat that side, but you'll find it a lot easier to manipulate if you're heating this side, because the glue will get very, very hot. So you want to heat this side and sculpt with this side. So yeah, we're going to heat gun. So we're just going to place this roughly over our mask. and go for it. Everyone ready? This is exciting.
Oh,
It's going to be so exciting.
I'm scared. Please don't blow up.
Nothing's going to blow up. Why would something blow up?
So, health and safety. What things should we consider when using a heat gun?
Heat guns are hot. Don't put your hands underneath it.
Do you need to wear anything? I notice you're not wearing anything.
I'm not wearing anything. As long as you don't put your hands in it, you don't need to wear gloves. Yeah. Do be aware that heat will transfer through the warbler. So, you know, there will be heat in multiple places, not just where the heat gun is. It will spread, you know, stuff heat does transfer through materials.
So, well, first of all, we got a posture check. I'll do that because Becky's a bit busy right now. Posture check.
I'm a bit busy.
Thank you, Tom Carr. We've also got a hydrate as well from Rose Witch.
I'll get involved in a second.
Dishy says Warbler is non-toxic.
Yeah.
Fungus, he says someone in my lab did use it to dry their hair. Would not recommend.
No, don't use a. This is not a hairdryer. This is also very important. Always put your heat gun down that way up. Can you see that? No.
Yeah, we can
that
just
way
about
up.
see it. Yeah, yeah.
Do not put your heat gun like heat tip down.
And then how do you know like how much to burn it, heat it?
You could keep heating it. Like if you can see now, this has started to go a bit crystalline looking. That's a sign of overheating. But there's actually no physical reason why you can't do that. The more you heat it, the kind of more it will stretch and it will get thin. Like if it, you know, really stretches, it will get quite thin and you just might have to reinforce it in bits. You can reinforce it with a scrap of warbler. That's fine. That works. But yeah, like, you know, you'll see it start to sink as it starts to heat. Once it starts to sink, it starts getting malleable. So, you know, that's it starting to get to the right point. And you'll feel it as you put your fingers towards it, like whether it's too hot to touch. And sometimes you'll kind of touch it and you'll be like, no, that's a bit hot. You just leave it a second and
so
go
basically
back in
just
again.
experiment and but it doesn't take a crazy amount of time to cool down so that it can
Yeah, so this is, you know, this will remain slightly malleable for about 5 to 10 minutes and then it will be completely solid again. Like but it will, you know, you'll stop being able to kind of work with it after about 5 minutes. It will just, you know, still retain a bit of its texture, flexibility. But this is, you can really see it starting to, it starts taking shape incredibly quickly. This is what's wonderful about Warbler, is if you were sculpting this from scratch, as you saw last week, like sculpting the mask from scratch took a while.
A long time, yeah. Akikin says, so have we got to do this naked then? Because you said don't wear anything.
Don't wear any PPE. You don't need to wear any PPE, is what we actually need to say. Don't wear anything. Probably still wear clothes. Like good crafting practice is to wear something between you and the craft. Best way, like that's a little hot right now, but over here is not too hot to work. Yeah, it's really Warbler is incredibly forgiving as a material. Like it's phenomenal. And I think this is part of what really appeals to me about it is, you know, if I get something wrong, I can just reheat it and do it again.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's, yeah, I mean, sort of clay, you kind of get that, but it's not as controlled as this. The control that you get with Warbler is because it kind of hardens in 10 minutes. That's just, you can't do that with clay. You can't necessarily see if you've made a mistake until like the next day when it's dry, and then you're like, oh, it doesn't work. And then you've either got to like carve away or add more. You can't just kind of go back in and rework it in the same way.
Okay.
Unless you're working with potter's clay that needs firing, but that's a whole different ball game.
So, Scroll Dear Hope Fighter has picked up on something I picked up on when you texted me a picture of this last week, in that it looks like a slab of skin.
I had not realised this until Kim said this, the skin masks. So we're being really creepy with all of this.
Fun Gussie has a question. How many times can you heat and reheat Warbler and still be able to manipulate it?
Pretty much indefinitely.
Okay.
It will start getting, like, you'll start getting texture changes, but that's it, really. Like, you can keep going back in if, you know, you decide something's not right or you want to resculpt something, you can keep going back in. We will talk in a bit about the mask and the mask mold, because one of the things about the mask mold is once you take it off this mold, if you reheat it, you will lose that molded shape.
Yeah.
So you really need to do as much, unless you're very careful, which I have done a bit, but you need to really get as much of the work done on your mold as you can.
Okay. We have another question, an interesting question from Euromatics, who says, what temperature would make this malleable again? I'm wondering if you got a very hot sunny day, like 40 degrees and humid, would it start going weird?
Not really.
Yeah.
So what does this say? Temperature 1 on this is 450 degrees C.
Okay. So don't put it in an oven and you'll be fine.
Yeah, I mean, like, the hairdryer doesn't get it quite hot enough. That probably tells you, and a hairdryer is hotter than a sunny day.
Yeah.
Or at least
an English sunny day.
Yeah. So yeah, it's not gonna affect things in the heat. And of course, like, once this is done, you will finish it. Like, we'll seal it and paint it and do all sorts of fun things next week. And once it's finished, it is just like plastic. So yeah, this is what I mean about ridges, like overlaps. So we're going to work on that now and making that smooth. This is where Warbler really comes into its own, because it really can be just like clay. So we're going to try and smooth out this bit now. So we're going to heat it lots. And you start to see it flop down as it gets hotter. Like, the more layers of Warbler you have, so the more heating it will require. Like, if you've got double layered, it's going to be stronger than a single layer. Oh, I really have started burning that there. That started going. You can see that texture. That started going properly dark brown.
Just about,
so
yeah.
That's really, pushing it. But it's, that's overheating does happen, but it's just going to change the texture and the color.
But if you're painting over it, it's not too big a...
Yeah, if you're painting over it, if you want to keep this texture, if you want to use the Warbler as a base, then I would use black Warbler, and I'd be, careful with how much I heated it. But if you're going to paint over it, this is just... right. Pot and water. Spoons are great for smoothing anything. I use them in clay work and all sorts, but they're great for this. Putting it in the water will prevent it sticking to the Warbler and allow you to really put some pressure onto that. And smooth it in. You will always, until you paint over it, probably see the line. Okay. But you won't be able to feel the line.
Right.
And that's the trick, is getting the line so that you can't feel it, so that it is smoothed in. But yeah, just using the back of the round bit of a spoon really gets good pressure onto that, and also means you can work it while it's pretty hot.
Yeah.
So that you can see the line. Wow, actually, I've done a pretty good job on that. You almost can't see the line.
So Mac10 says it sounds extremely similar to 3D printing filament.
It probably is. I mean, it's a thermoplastic, isn't it? That's sort of how 3D printing works.
This really reminds me of, like, the Evil Dead and the Necronomicon in that, which is, like, the book made of skin and flesh. And it's just someone's face. It really looks like that. Really.
I mean, if anyone wants to combine our tutorials and do a book made of flesh out of Warbler.
Yeah.
Yeah, someone asked how I was going to do the holes. Now, we put the holes in the mold. And what's great is that a heat gun will not only heat the Warbler, it will heat the air. And when air heats up, what does it do? Everyone who remembers their science lessons, it expands. So what we're going to get is very clear little bubbles, exactly where our hole's meant to go, and then we can push through them with a stabbing tool.
Chopstick?
chopstick, anything would work. I'm going to use,
Pencil.
I happen to have these clay tools that I never use. So I'm going to
That you never use for clay?
That I never use for clay, but I use for a lot of other things. So yeah, if we just heat over where the holes are roughly, start to see...
They're bubbling up.
They're bubbling up. And that gives a really clear indication. This is why using a mould, I mean, it's also bubbling up there, which I'm not sure it's meant to, but sure. But what's good is just taking a tool and running over it. You will not go into any... You can't sink in if there's not a hole behind the mask. So you can run over this and you'll feel the holes and sink into them. If you're just running over clay, you'll just smooth the warbler more.
Okay. So are you poking that all the way through, or just like to make an indent?
I'm poking that to make an indent, but what I can do is I can cut that off afterwards when we pull it out from the mold. So we can cut that off from the back, or we can poke it through with a stabby stick. Basically, however we want to do it. That will stretch the warbler as it pushes into the hole. So sometimes it will, create a hole because it's stretching the warbler thinner and thinner. So it might actually create proper holes. As you'll see, I think we've got one there. But yeah, this is... Oh, there we go. There's a hole.
Nice. So how are you going to sort that bubble out?
Just going to smooth it. Simples. This is warbler is so forgiving. This is part of why I love it. It's so forgiving of mistakes. You can remold it, you can resculpt it. At no point do you have to think, oh, I've made a mistake. Just get your heat gun back on it. Don't panic. No panic. There. Put your tool in water so the warbler doesn't get stuck to it. That is something I should have done. But it's fine. Warbler's forgiving. So we've actually got a hole there because the warbler's come away with my tool. That was unintentionally worked out, hasn't it? So I don't know if people noticed on my mask mold, but because of the way I sculpted it, because I don't have a perfect heart shape to put a mold over, bits of it were kind of higher than the ground. Only part of it was resting on the surface. There were bits with gaps underneath. So what I'm just doing now is I'm actually creating an edge that doesn't really exist in the mold.
Okay.
So I'm just melting the warbler down so it gets down to the surface, and then I'm just using the spoon to create a really defined edge that I can then cut off when it comes off the mold. Underneath that, there's no clay. The clay actually ends here.
Okay. So you're creating excess space.
I'm creating excess space to so we've got space to attach the cones, so it's a bit more curved around the outside, and then just pushing it down to create that edge that will be that line where I cut off. Right, this side of my mask, I've actually got less overlap than I did on the other, so sort of building my kind of extra edge is proving a little hard. Luckily, warbler has a bit of stretch in it, so we're just gonna pull that down a bit and create a nice little edge that we're going for all the way around here that we can cut off afterwards. I'm pretty happy with that. I'm going to turn it the right way up. I forget that we've turned the camera the right way now. So I'm pretty happy with that. And I'm going to leave it on the mold while I make some cones, because I think what we need to try and do is stick the cones on while it's still on the mold so that we don't lose this shape. So we're going to go to our cone mold. Yeah, we have a cone mold. But as we've got to make 10 cones that are all the same, it seemed like a sensible thing to do. So similar to how I've made a template for things. I've made a cone template, just a piece of paper, which sort of works. I'm hoping it works. I kind of threw it away. I didn't think I needed, but I needed it, so I threw it away. I accidentally threw it away. And with this is where your greaseproof paper or your silicone mat, because I'm actually going to heat the whole piece on the mat. So yeah, just heat warbler. You can heat warbler flat. And this is why you want a non-stick surface so that the glue doesn't stick to it. I haven't thingamabobbed. Vaselined. That's what I need to do. I haven't Vaselined. So that could have been a disaster. I could have ended up with one very nice cone, never able to make any more. But yeah, it's wear a mask. Wear a mask when sanding at all times, whatever you're sanding. I've heated that quite hot. Because these have an ever so slightly curved point, I'm just wrapping it slightly above the point, and then I'm going to bring it over. These triangles are just a bit too small. I'm hoping this works.
Where are we up to? What have I missed? So you finished the mask, and
we're trying to make cones, but I've just realised that these are really hard. I didn't put what I should have done is put a stick or something in that so I could pull it out. Because I've just realised that
it's like an ice cream cone.
So what we're going to do is we're going to sculpt slightly on the shape, but we're going to leave this open gap, and then we're just going to seal that up, and that's going to work, I promise. The way to seal up a line, if you've got a soldering iron, you can solder this and just put it together and just run a soldering iron on.
Oh, like
because
a glue
that
stick.
will give you because the soldering iron will just act as like a point, and that will just melt that and melt that together. Oh my god!
Oh, we are being raided. Well, that was a good timing.
What I'm actually going to do here, because my mould, there's nothing to pull it out. Oh god, the innuendo. Continues.
Innuendo.
Is I'm going to, my soldering iron is being a bit of a bitch right now. I need a new one. I bought a really cheap one. I'm going to use a strip of Worbla to seal this up on the inside. So, or I could go on the outside, but actually having this extra strip over the join will mean I can heat it up more and smooth it in. Basically, this hasn't gone quite as planned. Cones are new, okay? So we're working on this.
It never does, crafting.
It never does. Crafting is sort of it's a bit of winging it every single time. So we're just winging it, really, is what's happening.
That is crafting and DIY. People talk about DIY, and as I learned woodcrafting and stuff like that, it's pretty much you realise very quickly that
no one knows anything.
No one knows what they're doing, and 95% of DIY is fixing what you just fucked up.
So you'll notice that at the bottom of my cones, I've left a little line. I've done a little kind of fold down. The little fold down is so I've got something to attach it to the mask with, and this is why I've left the mask on the mould, because I need to basically push these into it and not have the mask move about. So I'm just going to trim the edges on these just to make them nice and not have these sticky out bits. So I'm just going to trim off that sticky out bit. Literally with Worbla, save even bits that big. Save everything.
Fingernail.
Save. Don't get rid of any of it.
How easy is it to snip?
Pretty easy. It gets a bit stiffer once it's heated. But
so that's an unheated bit. Right.
That's an unheated bit. Using a slightly heated bit, bit stiffer, you'll get slightly more of an edge sometimes, but it's not hard. You just, scissors. If you're struggling, maybe use a knife, press down. But it's pretty simple.
That's what she said.
So because we've got this slight curve out, do we need to bring that in a bit more? Might need to bring that in a bit more. Maybe we'll just start on that side. But what we've got is an edge there that we want to kind of... Do the ones on the top stick straight up, or are they slightly angled that way?
Let me find photo and bring photo to the top layer.
Ever so slightly angled, but it's ever so slight.
Yeah.
It's one side is straight and the other side tilts. So they're on a slight tilt.
It's not symmetrical. It's not perfect, I don't think.
Yeah, but they are roughly in the middle of the eyes. About there. Marking up Worbla, by the way, for when you were drawing your things. What are you drawing? Bow! For when you're drawing templates and stuff. Biro works great. However, Biro, of course, will not come off. So if you're planning on not painting this or treating it, then don't use pencil. That will kind of rub off. But Biro scribbles on great. So I'm just making a rough point where I want my cone to go.
Your cone has a line down the side of it. I'm guessing once that's painted, you won't see it. Like, or is that?
Yeah, I can't feel that.
Okay.
So that is just showing where the Worbla is connecting, because those are two different bits of Worbla that are probably heated slightly differently. So you'll see the line, like you can see that line, but you can't feel that line.
Mhm.
Like, lines are visible, but they're not. I mean, you could spend hours working and really making sure the lines aren't visible. Like, it would take a lot of heating and reheating and smoothing and reheating, and you'd probably then end up with a really nasty mark because you'd overheated it. But if you're going to paint that, it's no problem. It's about getting it smooth. It's about getting the texture rather than the look right. Get the shapes and the texture.
Okay.
So this is going to be tricky because these cones need to attach and they need to have their shape. So we need to be very, very, very careful. So what I like to do with this is to angle your gun so it's just hitting the bit you're trying to heat. But yes, this is dodgy. This is very, very, has to be very, very carefully managed. We're just going to go around and try and heat just that bit, not the whole cone. Now there will be some heat transfer because if you heat something, like the whole bit of things get hot, so there will be a bit of heat transfer around the bottom of the cone, but we're going to hope it doesn't go too bad.
So you're holding that heat gun quite close to your thumb. Like, I'm guessing you're not.
But because it's angled up, so this is quite directional. So because it's quite angled, the heat is going in that direction. So the heat is not directed towards my thumb.
Good. PPP.
There are some people who use gloves with Worbla and use, like, you can get heat protective gloves that are made for like salons and things, and for people using like hot hair straighteners and stuff like that. That are still quite good for, they still give you quite a lot of flexibility with your fingers. And
I need to give you your hair straighteners back.
yeah, you do.
I may have. I don't want to say ruined, but.
What did you do?
No, it's just that, like, I straightened my... No, I used them to curl my hair, and some hair dye may now be on the straighteners.
Oh, that's fine. That's
like,
fine.
they've gone red.
Okay.
It looks like I've maybe bled on it.
Okay. As long as you haven't bled on it, and I don't need to worry about you too much.
Yeah, it's fine.
It's fine. It's all good.
No,
so,
it's just
yeah,
the hair dye came off and dyed the tongs.
Okay, that's fine. Just going to angle in this heat again. And just so I can get that really smooth.
Oh, they're cool.
But that has worked out actually far better than I was expecting.
No, it just says I should make some new straighteners out of Worbla for you.
Look, things that need heat passed through them cannot be made out of Worbla. I know I said Worbla is great for everything. Worbla is great, but like, you're also not going to paint with Worbla. Like, you need multiple materials. I'm just offering you Worbla as a great sculpting material. It's not everything. Yes, I'm wrecking the cult of Worbla.
Is she mad?
So there's a spike. There's the start of Majora's Mask. What do we think, people?
I think I'm really excited. I'm really excited to wear this down to supermarkets.
Yeah.
Really
So
excited.
I'm going to finish attaching the cones and doing all the little bits to that in the week in between, because I want to show you some other Worbla techniques. So we're just going to move on to the other mask quickly. And we're going to do a quick... This is going to be so much quicker than that because it hasn't got loads of marks.
yeah.
So we're going to do a quick mask out of this. I'm going to take it off and then I'm going to attach things to it to show you how we can make stuff happen. Make other things out of Worbla. God, my words are gone now.
Wordly good man.
Okay, so just if you're struggling to cut your edge bits off, just heat them up ever so slightly so they're just a bit flexible like that, and then you'll cut through them really easily. So I'm just trimming off my edges while I'm still molding.
I'm receiving a call, so you're going to have to...
Okay, I'll take over. Slightly softening the Worbla if you're struggling to cut it will make it really easy to cut your edges off. Get that lovely smooth line. Easier with this one because I don't have overhang. I don't have extra bits I need. So doing it sort of cutting it while it's on the mask and cutting it to fit the mould is just sort of really easy. Again, similarly to how we did with the cones, like overlapping and joining it over, if you get your mask, you can kind of cut it and rejoin it, like once it's off, with another strip or with a soldering iron, like I said. So that's kind of trick, but it leaves a kind of weak, which is not something ideally you want. Whoever said reminds them of the Splicer mask, that is what we are making. We are making a Splicer mask so that I can show you some techniques. What's great about this mask base is that it's a mask blank. The Majora's Mask mold will only ever be used to make Majora's Mask, which is why I really hope you want some. You guys want some Majora's Masks, because otherwise I'm stuffed. Well, otherwise Kim's going to get a mold as well as a mask. But this is kind of demonstrating how if you made a mold blank, then you could make anything off it just by, this would be my base, and then I build on that with water. Soften the eyes, heat through them, and stick. Now, the only reason I didn't cut the eyes out of the Worbla to begin with, which I could have done, or cut at least rough holes for the eyes, is because my eyes are a bit asymmetric in the mold. So I wanted to kind of give myself a bit of Worbla leeway so that I could kind of maybe I'm going to now completely fail to because I'm doing this in a rush, but for future use, that's sort of why I didn't do that. Now, one thing you need to remember when you're putting Worbla over a mold and when you're building them, any underhangs or pieces that are sort of, you can't wrap around the clay because otherwise you can't get it off. So you need to, this is why I'm not molding the eyes down and molding like the excess Worbla out, because if I mold it down, it won't come off. So, again, that's one thing you can cut and rejoin afterwards, but it's, overhangs are a problem. This is why masks is mostly, so they're a great mold to make. But molds, anyone who does molding, silicon, otherwise, etc., will know this. Like, you want as few overhangs as possible, so that you get a clean mask, you get a clean mold release. Oh, I haven't squawked yet on screen. That's always good. Always good to have a stream squawk. But yeah, so I've got a picture of the Splicer mask up now, so I can play around with that. So let's just talk about playing with Worbla for fun. Worbla can be bent in any shape. So the Splicer ears are actually they're quite straight, but I'm going to make slightly more natural looking rabbit ears. So I'm going to kind of sculpt these, but I am going to cut them first. Now, on this case, because we're sort of going to see both sides, I'm going to have the back, the outside, the textured bit, is going to be the back of the ears, and the glue bit is going to be the inside of the ears, so that we're still kind of sculpting into that. So you're kind of in a bit being that glue bit. Does that make sense to everyone? Right, so just Worbla sculpting. This is so floppy now, it's like having a thin sheet of clay. So you can literally, I've actually probably overheated this a bit. So I'm going to pinch the top together to create the point of a rabbit's ear. And I can really just kind of sculpt a proper kind of ear shape here. Funny. And sort of this has had seconds under the heat gun, and it is floppy as anything. Like, I could now keep sculpting this for a few minutes. This is what I mean, like, to get it, I never got it to this under a hairdryer. You cannot get this level of flexibility under a hairdryer.
Floppy.
It's a bunny. Flopsy. That's what we should go for. What I want to show you is, because there's lots of nice details on the Splicer helmet, so I want to show you two other methods of working with Worbla that are really simple and that you can do with offcuts. So first things first, there's some nice little like arrow bits coming down the head here. So I'm going to just draw a rough arrow Oh, it might be that this bit's been preheated and that's why it's not drawing on so well. Do you know what? I'm gonna wing it. I'll cut it freehand. Just eyeball it, because pens are being a dick.
Pens are lame.
Okay, so just that's a good little shape. That, you know, I like for my center mark. But what I want to do is I want it to be thicker. So I'm going to take another piece of Worbla that this fits on. And I'm going to heat this up. Okay, here's the trick. If you've got leftover circles of... the leftover centers of tape, you can use those to hold your small pieces while you heat them up. Don't do it while the tape's on there because you melt the glue and weird things. Also, if you have a cupcake tray, you can put it in there and heat it up.
Hey!
Because small pieces, you'll burn your fingers if you try and hold on to it. So, but it will fly around because the heat gun is, you know, making some movement.
Making the air.
So, making the air. But I'm just going to stick this on another piece to make it a bit thicker. So I'm going to stick that down exactly. Worbla loves sticking to itself. Like, that's really what Worbla is perfect at doing. And then I'm just going to use this as a template to cut it out again. And what I'm doing here is just creating a double thickness of Worbla, so it's just got a bit more height. So just now, these may detach slightly when heated again, but it will mean I'll end up with two pieces that are exactly the same size. Doesn't matter. And we can take that. Center there. That kind of just softly just smooth out the edges, but still keep it. These are kind of raised bits, so I don't want to, you know, smooth it in entirely. Just want to soften the edges and kind of bevel them in.
So you're trying to like essentially glue it on?
Kind of? Because it's got that glue backing, you can just heat it and glue it on.
Yeah.
So, and then I'm just using the edge of the spoon just to kind of curve it in so it doesn't look quite so stuck on. And when this is, you know, painted and these bits are standing out and are gold, that will look really, really nice. So yeah, that's just one way of using offcuts to get a nice, you know, lovely finish. Another way, we're just going to do a quick little bit, and I'm going to put a circle up the top. There's a nice little circle bit here on the design I'm looking at. So if you've got lots of tiny bits of Worbla, so let's take some little scraps that are lurking around my table here. You can put them in. You can heat them up all together. Heat them till they're a bit malleable. Oop, there. Then start smushing them together.
Oh. So that's how you get your offcuts to not be offcuts.
That's how you get your offcuts.
Be uncuts.
And yeah, you can completely, this is still a bit, you know, completely sculpt that. And sort of keep folding it, if you keep heating it, if you need to get it like more smoother or whatever. But there I can create a lovely little ball. And that's how I made my little dragon, was doing bits like this.
Okay.
It's just tiny. Ball's running away now.
Yeah.
Just doing tiny bits and just keep heating them.
Until they're a big solid ball.
And yeah, Dishy said earlier, if you want to, you can then put that through a pasta maker.
Okay.
And it won't ever look like the sheet of Worbla you bought, but you can get back to having a sheet of Worbla, essentially.
Could you roll it out with a rolling pin?
Rolling pin? Yeah, I reckon so. Just something that, you know, is not going to react to the heat too much. Like pasta makers are metal generally, which is good. So yeah, that just gives you a nice. But yeah, you can essentially turn your offcuts into a ball and use it like clay. And that's phenomenal to me. It's the fact that you can use it to sculpt, you can use it to mould, you can use it like clay, like Yeah, Kishu Mikase saying rolling pins usually have rough textured wood though. Yeah, I have a. Do I have it? I have a clay rolling pin that's like clear plastic. That would probably do pretty well. And like texture, you know, if you've got a tiny bit of texture that's been picked up from something, a little blast of the heat gun will sort of, you know, will really help that. Right, I'm just going to try and remove this mask so that you can see one mask removed.
Pop it out.
It is literally a bit like popping it out. You just have to gently kind of ease it away from play, because there's a bit of flex in Warbler still when it's solid. Just have to ease off the flex. I'm also very aware that my mask is the actual mask mould on this one. Oh, that's not going to help. That there's a piece of
you got a
Warbler
bit attached.
My mask mould on this is very fragile because it's not really thick enough. So I'm just being very careful with this. Whereas Majora's is much thicker, and I can like, you know, be a bit stronger with it.
Nigel just says, would it help to have a layer of baking paper between the mask and the Warbler?
You pick up the texture of the baking paper.
Yeah, that's what I would have thought, yeah.
Yeah, the problem is, like, this is why you work on getting your mask smooth. This is why I spent so much time sanding this one. Your Warbler will pick up imperfections on your mask. So you need to be sort of very careful about putting things in. And, like, that's why the Vaseline works, because the Vaseline basically becomes a liquid.
So next week we are going to be looking at the painting and the finishing, I guess, like the decorating for these two masks. What do people need to get involved with that?
Right, so I'm going to be using GESSO.
What?
Which is the stuff. GESSO is primer. It is used often for canvases.
Mm-hmm.
People like this is easily available from an artist shop. Is GESSO. GESSO is a great primer for Warbler. There's lots of other more expensive things you can use and things that can be sanded and smoothed. So
some kind of primer, but specifically, is it specific Warbler primer or like?
No, like what? I'm using GESSO. Like GESSO is just like a paint primer. It's like an acrylic primer.
Okay.
You could use spray primer. GESSO is quite thick, so it smooths out some of the texture. So yeah, that's sort of why I'm using GESSO, is to kind of give it a bit of that, you know what, I am just going to heat it ever so slightly. You can use wood glue, you can use PVA, Dishy. You'll probably be able to suggest some of the more expensive things that people can use if they really want to. You know, like any of the silicone primers that people use for cosplay.
So a kick-in says it's a canvas primer. It's kind of like PVA glue with gritty bits like ground chalk.
Yeah. But what's really exciting about this is I went shopping the other day, or I went shopping online, and I found a company, Fred Aldous, which is an independent art store in Leeds and Manchester, who do some of the things I wanted, like cheaper than I have seen them anywhere before. And they have black GESSO primer. And I love having black as my base. It's just, I like building color off it. Even if I'm going to then paint it white, it just means like if there's cracks or underlying, it gives a shadow to it at the base. And I like that. So yeah, I'm really excited to have black GESSO. If you know, I'll prime things before coming back next week, so that next week we can just paint and do finishing things.
So prime your masks.
Prime your masks.
Dishy also suggests wood glue, PVA glue, Flex Blond, spray primers, or filler. But yeah, and what else would they need? I'm guessing the usual kind of paints and things like that.
Yep, paints, stuff, all those things. I'm going to be using, what am I going to be mainly on Majora's Mask. I'm going to be using... What? No! Yes, I'm going to be using my Arteza paints. Oh, come on! So close. I really didn't want to destroy the mask.
And this is why you lube your mask.
Yeah, I maybe didn't lube quite enough because I was rushing this one.
Right. Just because we've got 4 minutes to go, like, is there anything else? Like, I just want to wrap up this bit of the stream while you're fiddling, because I know you're getting very distracted with trying to get that bad boy out.
Yeah,
but
you know what? We're gonna leave that on there, and I'm gonna take it off. So I don't spend the whole time just stressing about that.
I don't want you to accidentally smash it and destroy it. I want you to, like, take your time and
take
doing
my
it.
time.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's just go back to Majora's Mask quickly. Majora's Mask is seemingly made out of wood. In like pictures, it seems to have like a bit of a wood grain texture on it. Now, if you've got a soldering iron, you could literally draw wood grain and lines with the soldering iron. So you could like line down soldering iron, because that will sink into the warbler and melt it a bit. So you could actually really create a wood grain texture in your warbler at the start if you wanted to try that. Otherwise, there's lots of things you can do with paint effects to create wood grain, or like taking down a really thick, stiff brush during your primer stage to just kind of scratch it, like how we did with the TARDIS when we used quite a strong brush technique to kind of get those lines. But if you wanted textural lines, something like I either used a soldering iron, or like we've used before, the stuff. I've used the black outliner, the stuff that's for
the stained glass window thing.
Yeah, you could create lines with something like that. Basically, you can create the texture of the wood into your warbler if you want to before you start decorating it, or you can add that later at decoration. You'll need to prime. You'll need paint. That's sort of it. Anything else you've got? I'm going to be using some rub and buff and some crackle glaze, because these are things I bought the other week and I'm really excited. And I think those will look really good on the Splicer mask. That's it really, I think.
But yeah, so we will be back next Wednesday, same time, to do the final part of this, which is making painting and decorating. I guess, Becky, in the meantime, you're gonna you're gonna carry on sticking on more spikes and then prime the suckers. So that's what you guys need to do to get ready for next week. Say bye, Becky.
Bye.
Bye. I didn't die on stream. Wasn't that great? Oh my god.